Okay, so right now I'm working with 16 humans, 14 hybrids, 4 Lucianites, 4 vampires, 5 phoenixes, 4 angels, 9 demons, 7 aliens, 5 guardians, and 5 gods. That makes roughly 73 characters that I either need to design, redesign, or tweak in order to get the full team available for the Story of Stardust reboot. Oh. Oh no. This was my train of thought I got only after I had made my first video on the world of Elavida Revisited. Since I wanted to make the next 7 episodes focusing on the main 7 species native to Elavida, I sort of began to realize exactly how many characters I was going to have to redesign. The sheer number of these characters is pretty intimidating, I'm not going to lie. But having the numbers laid out for me has actually been able to help me work through exactly what it is I want to do with the new story and everything I want to change now. This goes past just the social, political, and geographical layout of the world into completely overhauling characters' personalities and backstories. So, Episode 1.5 of the World of Elavida Revisited must be my thought process into how I chose to design, redesign, or tweak the designs of all of my 16 human characters so that they'll all be ready for Episode 2. Right? Well, not exactly. Even though I do plan to have all 16 designed by the time Episode 2 comes out, even if you might not see all of them, I wanted to start off taking things slow and see how some new character design habits work for me. The simple truth of the matter is that I'm not really in love with the way I design characters. Now, that's not to say I don't love some characters that I've designed. Blank from Tales Told, Vilui and Ken from Ask the Dead Man, and both Amir and Titus from Amir and Titus Explore the Universe are some of my favorite designs I've done. But more of what I'm getting at is that I don't really enjoy my approach to designing characters. Mainly what I used to do is that I had one idea in mind for that character, and then everything else needed to work around that one idea. It would often end up with my characters looking pretty eclectic, or like they didn't belong to the same world as the others. I've been very satisfied with the work I was doing for Tales Told to get all of those characters looking like they came from the same world. But when I look back at Stardust, all I see are the inconsistencies between designs. You have to understand, the story of Stardust has been in my life since I was a very young child. I even admitted in one of my older videos, that has since been deleted, that I have no memory of this story never existing. That might just be my bad memory, but it could also be just how long I've worked on this project. So, when I was faced with the task of redesigning my old characters in order to bring them into my current world, I chickened out a bit. I didn't want to change too much about their personalities or appearances because these are the characters that I've known for so long. So, even though I updated their designs and artwork, I was still struggling with a lot of the design flaws that I had when I was younger. I think the 2 characters that exemplified this the most are Sage Yokuro and Sonar Drive. 2 characters who are part of an infamous little group in Stardust known as the Blue Trio. Along with them is their alien friend, Ion Malice. But he's not too important to us right now. I think my big thing with Sage and Sonar's revamped designs is that they just look so pedestrian. This is supposed to be a fantasy world where people are flying across the map, breathing fire from their mouths, and participating in never-ending wars between people. And these 2 are wearing an oddly pointy tank top and a sweater. What the fuck was I thinking? I think what got me about these 2 is that I don't think I ever had a good enough grasp on their story and what it was supposed to mean in the grand scheme of things. My young self just saw Sage as a priss who gave everyone the cold shoulder, and Sonar as a bitch who would take advantage of others. But when I redesigned them initially, I kind of realized that those personalities don't coincide with their new stories at all. But a part of me still wanted to hold on to what I made when I was a kid, foolishly thinking that I could work with it. So, with two conflicting ideas for each party, I ended up with nothing exciting at all. I wanted to overhaul these two designs first because I know that if I can fall in love with these two again, then I have a better chance of creating something great, not only for the rest of my humans, but also for my story in general. So, let's see how I did. Sage is the one I'm going to start out with first, because I know Sonar's going to give me a much tougher go. I decided to try out some new designing techniques I learned from other artists online. First off, I made an inspiration sheet for both Sage and Sonar, typically known as a mood board, highlighting different aspects of who they are and what I want them to look like. My main things for Sage were color and big, poofy, round shapes contrasted with slim arms and legs. I wanted to definitely give her more shape than this science flask look she originally had, but I didn't know exactly where to start. One thing I wanted to emphasize with Elavida is that places, people, and different aspects of their culture are inspired by real-world cultures. But it's not a one-to-one comparison. Just because a small town has some Japanese-influenced buildings doesn't mean that this is Japan and that these people are Japanese. It usually stems from what I find would fit in certain Elavida subcultures based on the way it fits into the real world. Now, what does this have to do with Sage's redesign? Well, Sage comes from a small village known as Krayer, and this village is located right on Lusionite land, close to the Lusion Kingdom. And what is the Lusion Kingdom known for? That's right.
Is it but is it fashion? It's fashion.
Its people are known to be decked out in all the latest fashion trends and material goods. Anything that can bring them all style and substance. But we might get into that when we get to the Lusionites episode, which might take a while. You see, I originally thought it would be a fun idea to merge the fashion capitals of the world into one kingdom as a way of exemplifying the people's fashion sense. But unfortunately, after taking a look through London, Paris, Milan, and Tokyo, I realized I kind of screwed myself over. I already had a plan for Paris and Tokyo, and London and Milan just weren't syncing up together for me. I decided to just base Lusion on Milan, because that's where I tend to see a lot of avant-garde fashion shows stem from. At least when I first looked it up. And with Krayer being so closely linked to Lusion, I think their people would also be pretty fashionable just by proximity. And so I decided to look through some different outfits from Paris and London to see if that would give me some inspiration for Sage. First off, I started her redesign by doing some very rough gesture drawings. Her original pose did emphasize her shyness, but it just bored me. I wanted to make something a bit more energetic than what I had. It took me quite a while before I landed on something I could feasibly work with. I wasn't too happy about it, admittedly, but I thought if I futzed around with it a bit more, I could morph it into something I liked. And then... yeah, I changed the whole pose. Why, you ask? Well, two major reasons. One was that I just wasn't happy with the pose I was working with. It felt just as stiff and unimaginative as the original one, and showed no personality. Two was that it veered a little too close to Ion's pose for a secondary redesign. A pose I admittedly plan on reusing for his new one, that I hope to make at some point. So I didn't want the trio bogged down with too much sameness. Plus, the new pose emphasized how Sage is indeed a sorcerer. I'll get into more about human magic in episode 2, but just know that it's pretty heavily linked to the humans' culture. And here comes the fun parts! One of the main things I wanted to do with my references and inspiration board was I wanted to outline exactly what it is about these people and their looks that I enjoyed. For For Sage, it turned out to be how big yet natural a lot of the clothes looked. I really enjoyed this picture of this model just leaning back on the railing in this beautiful puffy sweater. And I found out the most of what I liked about each piece was the roundness of the top, contrasted by how much it gathered in the waist. What I decided to do was to grab one of my favorite brushes for sketching out large, broad details and lightly draw clothing on top of the model I sketched. This actually allowed me to push my proportions more than if I went over and sketched something with a pencil, which is what I'm used to doing. By making the clothing sketch more of a mass, I was able to grasp what the silhouette would be. Once I was done with the initial clothing sketch, I realized something was still missing. As much as I was liking the silhouette, it just didn't feel fantasy enough for me. Also, I was missing that odd little half-skirt thing that Sage wore in her original design. However, I didn't want to go back to sticking something on her legs and calling it a day. I needed something more. You'll see me work with this concept of a capelet for quite a while. I end up changing how it's positioned, what's coming off of it, should it be a full-blown cape? But in the end, what I decided was a hooded capelet. I chose this one not only because I liked how it added to the silhouette instead of taking away, but it also led into part of Sage's backstory. Sage is in hiding from a small group of thieves and scoundrels who got her to work for them through blackmail. I imagine her wanting to hide her face is just another part of her character that's easily shown within her clothing. End up changing her face all that much, other than giving her a ponytail, which she rightfully deserves. I always liked her face and hair, so I didn't feel the need to modify it too drastically. Designing the cute little wand was fun, but I definitely think she needed more than that. I added the belt full of potions because it just seemed like any good sorcerer would have an arsenal ready and raring to go. Plus, it does give her more of a whimsical nature. And here comes the hard part. The colors. I don't even know if I should commentate over this. Just know that it took me far too long to decide what I liked and what went where. The only thing I was ever certain of was that the shirt was white. I can say, with almost 100% certainty, that Sage has never looked better. Her design definitely reaches that whimsical idea I had in mind of a peasant-like fantasy wizard that I was shooting for. I also love the pose I was able to conjure up for her. Also, appreciate those legs. Please, they're never gonna look this good again. I think what I love the most is that it's not a lot, but it doesn't strike me as bland either. It's fun, it's energetic, and as round can be. You'll see why I'm harping on the roundness once we get to Sonar. Speaking of which, this video is sponsored by me. Did I do it right? Is that good? No, in all seriousness, guys, I thought this would be an interesting time to tell you about my little side project, simply known as Redbubble. I've worked with print-on-demand sites before, and I can confidently say that Redbubble is much easier to work with. If you're interested, you can come check me out at PZ Productions, where I will be uploading new art of mine, including the ending piece to this very video, to be made into shirts, mugs, pins, and much more. I may even get some fan art in there with IPs that are allowed to be sold, of course. Don't sue me. If you want to stay up to date on a bunch of exclusive merch, come follow me at PZ Productions and find a style that is right for you. Okay, back to the video. Sonar was a character that I've always kind of had trouble with. For many years. I just hated him for what he represented and what he acted like. I'm not sure why I never scrapped him from the story like I did other characters, including Miyuki, the horse carrier, the puppeteer, and Sakura. Perhaps it's because I was so attached to the blue trio that I just didn't want to break them up? Despite how much Sonar and Sage were left behind after I grew an attachment to Ion. Sonar's original personality was really that he was just a nasty brute, focused solely on his revenge, and he didn't care about the people he stepped on in order to achieve his goals. It could have been an interesting character to write, but nothing about him screamed likable. Not to say every character has to be likable, but I should at least enjoy writing them. I've decided to drastically overhaul his personality along with his relationships with Sage and Ion. Instead of being a brute who steps on others to get what he wants, he's more of a hothead who often drives people away with his bluntness and lack of care. Except of course for Ion and Sage. Ion being partially incapable of really understanding his own emotions and those of others, finds it refreshing that someone else is willing to tell it like it is, rather than hide behind the facade of trying to be nice. While Sage finds comfort in Sonar as a protector, someone she can trust to always have her back and be loyal, almost to a fault. Sonar's still hell-bent on revenge towards the people who experimented on him, but I think it's necessary to keep that part of his story, considering how big a plot point it ends up becoming. No spoilers, but yeah. Okay, now onto the redesign. Admittedly, posing Sonar was a lot easier than Sage. He's more of the square, grounded character, as opposed to Sage's round floatiness, if that makes any sense at all. I went for more of a leaned back, casual, but almost threatening look. Something that tells you, oh, he'll beat you up, but he won't even break a sweat while doing it. Then there comes the topic of Sonar's inspiration board. You see, Sonar comes from the pyramid Yapit, a floating city in the sky that specializes in vehicles. It only made sense since he was known to be a street racer before he became a member of Stardust. However, there's something very important about the pyramids you should know. All of the pyramids on Elavida are loosely based on real-world major cities. And what's Yapit, you might ask? That's right, Tokyo. So Sonar's inspiration board is made up of 3 key aspects: sleek, silver cars, cyberpunk aesthetics, and streetwear from Tokyo, Japan. This really changed up Sonar's whole image. His original design was pretty lackluster, what with just being a shirt and jeans. But with these new inspirations, I plan on making something greater than the sum of its parts. I chose the aesthetic of Cyberpunk because Sonar's whole backstory hinges on the fact that he was forcibly turned into a cyborg. So I thought the neon futuristic industrial aesthetic would work for him. Also, I was really excited to utilize the Tokyo streetwear inspiration because I was loving the shapes that the men's jackets would make and how large everything appeared. Definitely gave me some wild ideas for what is to come next. Everything was going great until, my computer went on the fritz and I lost a lot of the sketching phase. But I was able to realize it before I got too much further into the redesign, so I hope that makes up for it. As you can see, I started out with the large collar covering the bottom half of his face. It felt similar to the concept of someone covering themselves up with a hood, but more futuristic looking. I know I wanted him to have a very large, square jacket that would give him this odd, angular, but still grounded shape, despite all of his muscles being lost underneath the clothing. I went back and forth on his pants for a bit because I didn't know if they were distracting too much from the shape of the outfit. I wanted to add on some chains for a little bit of that street punk aesthetic since, well, he is a punk. I love the initial sketch of the jacket and how large and angular it was, but I did struggle a bit with the length. I didn't know if I wanted to go all out and have it completely cover him up, or if I wanted to hitch it up a bit higher so his legs weren't completely lost. I know I wanted this outfit to have some neon and or bright elements to it to harken back to the whole cyberpunk aesthetic. I just wasn't sure exactly what color they should be, which is something I struggle with a bit later. I opt for the short in the front, long in the back form of the jacket because it gives him a lot more flow than I originally anticipated.
Welcome aboard. Activate.
gave me a bit of trouble. I knew I still wanted it to be short, but I wasn't sure how short. I went for really short because I just couldn't picture him with anything longer. Oh, those wires pulsing in his chest? Yeah, they're a huge plot point for him. So I needed to add them into the character sheet. And yes, they do pulse. Like a heart. When I started inking him, there were a few things I changed right off the bat. First off, I added in the feather that Ion gives him when he first comes to Elavida. Which, now that I realize it, Ion originally gave that to Sage. Because at the time, they were the blue trio, the three of them, so I thought it would make sense. But then when I changed up a bit of their personality and their backstory, Sage and Ion didn't get along in the beginning, so I had Ion actually give that feather, the same exact feather, looking the same exact way, to Sonar instead of Sage. But now that Sage and Ion are getting along in the beginning of the new story, I wonder if that feather doesn't fit Sage's aesthetic more than it fits Sonar's, and I don't know if I should give them both a feather, or switch up the feather, or who should I give the feather to? Shit! And secondly, I decided to bring his pants down over his shoes, since that was more the style I saw in the references I had. And here comes the colors. Oh, the colors. Oh, my favorite part. I changed his eye color from blue to red to further drive home that whole evil robot concept that a lot of dystopian, futuristic stories seem to have for some reason. I knew Sonar's jacket was gonna have a pattern, but I didn't know exactly what. I futzed around with it for a bit until it was more of a abstract piece that I was happy about. See that gold color I added to his jacket on a whim? Yeah, it takes me a while to get over how much I like that color. I decided to make the lines on his jacket holographic because the regular yellow and blue colors just weren't working for me. I like how odd the holographic pieces look though.
Welcome aboard. Activate.
And here's the final piece for Sonar Drive. I added the face to his right, showing off his gold tooth at the last minute, because I almost forgot about that plot point. But my goodness, I love his new design. Especially when compared to his two older designs. I feel like this one says so much more about him and where he comes from. I really can't wait to start working on the other characters and see where these new character design habits can take me. I'd like to take this moment to thank everyone who's been supporting me recently, with my work here on YouTube, and my work on DeviantArt, Tumblr, and Instagram. I recently started a new job that's going to take up a lot more of my time than I had anticipated. I do have high hopes of where this new job could take me, and where I'll end up working. But for now, I'm content with where I am. I don't plan on stopping my side projects of art and writing anytime soon, but it will progressively get a little slower as I get further into this job. I just want to thank everyone who's been following my Elemental Pony redesigns recently, as I've seen a lot of growth on my channel just from those videos alone. While I don't believe it'll ever become one of my main projects that I work on, I do love working on it and seeing where the concept can go. If you have your own MLP redesigns, whether they be elemental or not, or you want to make art of the designs that I made, do share them with me, I'd love to see them. Whether in video or image form would be awesome. And if you're more interested in talking about original characters, world building, and original fiction, come follow me on my second Tumblr account, Tell Me About Your OCs, where I regularly ask simple and complicated questions about your original characters. Or come follow me on Royal Road, where I'll be posting updates of my original story, The Altars, every Thursday. That's all I've got for today, folks. I hope to hear from y'all very soon. Bye bye!